The call came in just after midnight. 2 lynxes injured, possibly dying, spotted off a back road that cut through miles of pine forest. The blizzard had been howling for 36 hours. Visibility was almost nothing. The rescue truck crawled forward, headlights swallowed every few feet by walls of white. Wind screamed through broken branches. The wipers could barely keep pace. Then someone saw movement. 2 dark shapes, low to the ground, pressed together in a hollow where the snow had drifted deep. At first glance it looked like one was already gone, the other refusing to leave. But as they approached, boots crunching through ice, they saw the faint rise and fall of breath. Shallow, weak. But there, both were alive. The female was larger, her body curled tight around the smaller one. Even as gloved hands reached for them, she didn't let go. Her paws stayed locked, her head tucked low, shielding. They wrapped them in thermal blankets, moving quickly but carefully. Frost clung to their matted fur. Their eyes barely opened. Frostbite darkened the tips of their ears. Into the carriers. Heaters turned high. The truck pulled back onto the road. On the drive, one of the rescuers kept watch over the female. She was restless, shifting, grunting softly, her sides heaving in a rhythm that didn't match exhaustion. Then it hit him. She's in labor. The words hung in the warm air of the cab, impossible and true. She hadn't been protecting another bobcat. She'd been protecting the lives still inside her. The team exchanged glances, silent, stunned. They'd pulled dying animals from snow before. But this was different. This was a mother on the edge of collapse. Her body somehow choosing to bring life forward even as it barely held on. The truck sped up. Every minute mattered now. In the carrier, the female's breathing quickened. Her body tensed, contracted, released. She made no sound, just the quiet primal work of survival. The smaller bobcat, pressed into the corner of his own carrier, watched her through the mesh. His yellow eyes didn't blink. By the time they reached the wildlife center, her contractions were coming in waves. They lifted her out gently, rushing her inside under fluorescent lights that felt too bright, too sterile for what was about to happen. She was dying and giving birth at the same time, and no one knew which one would live. The wildlife center smelled of antiseptic and pine shavings. Under the fluorescent hum, the 2 bobcats were laid onto heated pads, their bodies limp and unresponsive. Mara's breathing came in shallow pulls. Her companion, smaller and leaner, didn't move at all, just stared, yellow eyes half closed as if deciding whether to let go. The team worked in practiced silence. Warm towels, IV lines threaded into veins barely visible beneath matted fur. A thermometer read dangerously low. One of the techs murmured something about odds, but no one answered. Then Mara's body tensed. It wasn't a seizure, it was something else. A deep, involuntary contraction that rippled down her sides. Her mouth opened, not in pain, but in something older. Instinct. She's in labor, someone said, voice tight. The room shifted. What had been a rescue became something none of them had prepared for. They moved her into a quieter space. Dim lighting, soft bedding, warmth dialed higher. Her companion was placed in an adjacent enclosure, close enough to see. He lifted his head, nose pressing against the mesh, and made a sound, low, guttural, almost a question. Mara didn't answer. She was somewhere else now, her body doing what it had been designed to do, even as hypothermia and exhaustion worked against her. Hours passed. The contractions came in waves. Some strong, some faint. The rescuers took turns watching, whispering encouragements that felt foolish and necessary all at once. One tech sat on the floor, knees pulled to her chest, unable to look away. Then in the early hours before dawn, a small shape emerged. A kitten, barely the size of a human palm, wet, trembling, eyes sealed shut. Mara turned her head, instinct guiding her tongue across its tiny body. The kitten mewed, a sound so faint it barely registered. Minutes later, another, then a third. 3 lives, pulled from the edge of nothing. The male companion chirped softly from his enclosure, his gaze fixed on Mara and the kittens now tucked against her belly. She licked each one in turn, her breathing still labored but steadying. No one spoke. There were no congratulations, no celebrations, just breath held and slowly released. The kind of silence that comes when you've witnessed something that wasn't supposed to happen. One of the rescuers leaned back against the wall, eyes wet, and let out a long exhale. Mara rested her head on the straw, her body finally still. The kittens nursed, their tiny mouths working blindly. Against every calculation, every statistical likelihood, they were alive. She had been seconds from death in that snow, yet somehow, through will or chance or something no one could name, she had chosen recovery and connection, rising emotion and human bond. The weeks that followed felt like watching time move differently. Mara's ribs, once sharp beneath her fur, began to soften. The kittens, 2 males and a female, grew from trembling scraps into small wobbly explorers. Their eyes opened, their ears perked. They stumbled over each other in clumsy play, batting at shadows and pouncing on nothing. The male companion, who the team had started calling Scout, never left the adjacent enclosure. He slept pressed against the mesh divider, chirped when Mara moved, and watched the kittens with something that looked like vigilance. Whether he was mate, brother, or simply loyal friend, no one could say, but his presence mattered. The rescue center, usually a place of quiet routine, began to hum with something else. Staff found reasons to linger near the enclosures. Volunteers arrived early. People who'd worked with injured raptors and foxes for years found themselves stopping mid-task just to watch Mara teach her young. She showed them how to crouch low before a pounce, how to freeze when startled, how to climb the low branches placed in their space. Every lesson was silent, instinctive, ancient. The team started calling them the Snow Family, but as the kittens grew stronger, bolder, faster, more wild, the reality settled in like frost. This could not be their home. The decision was made carefully. Mara and her family were moved to a larger naturalized enclosure. Dense brush, fallen logs, open sky above. It was designed to let them remember what they were. The visits from staff became less frequent. Feedings were timed to minimize human contact. The kittens, once curious about voices, began to hide when footsteps approached. Mara watched it all with eyes that seemed to hold 2 truths at once: gratitude and wildness. She no longer approached the mesh when people came near. She didn't need to. One evening, a veterinarian stood at the observation window, watching Mara lead her kittens through tall grass. Scout followed behind, moving like a shadow. "They're ready," she said quietly. No one argued. The snow that had nearly taken them was gone now. Spring had opened the forest again, green and alive and endless. It was time to let them go. But standing there watching Mara groom her young beneath a sky they would soon belong to, the vet felt something catch in her chest. Some bonds, she thought, aren't meant to be kept. They're meant to be honored. Spring arrived in full, the forest thick with new growth, the air sweet with thaw and pine. The rescue truck wound through backcountry roads until it reached a ridge overlooking miles of unbroken green. This was their country, the place they were always meant to be. The team worked in silence, unloading the carriers with care. No ceremony, no speeches, just the quiet respect of people who knew they were witnesses, not owners. Mara's carrier was opened first. She stepped out slowly, nose lifted, reading the air. Her body, once broken and brittle, moved with fluid grace. Behind her, the 3 kittens tumbled out, curious, cautious, testing the ground beneath their paws. Scout emerged last. He paused at the edge of the truck bed, yellow eyes scanning the tree line, then dropped to the earth without a sound. For a moment, no one moved. Then Mara turned her head, just once, and looked back toward the humans standing there. It wasn't gratitude. It wasn't dependence. It was something quieter. Acknowledgement, maybe. Understanding. Then she turned away. The kittens followed, their spotted coats already blending into dappled light. Scout fell in beside her, and together they moved through the underbrush, silent, certain gone. The rescuers stood on that ridge long after the family had disappeared. The forest swallowed them whole, as it always does. One of the techs wiped her eyes. Another smiled. throat tight. No one said anything. There was nothing that needed saying. Weeks later, deep into summer, a motion-triggered camera captured them. Mara led the way through a clearing edged with snowmelt runoff, her kittens, larger now, more confident, trailing close. Scout moved at the rear, head swiveling, ever watchful. They were hunting, learning, surviving. The footage played on a laptop in the dim glow of the rescue center's office. A small group gathered to watch, their faces soft in the light. One of them laughed quietly, relief mixed with something bittersweet. She made it, someone whispered, but that wasn't quite right. Mara hadn't just made it. She had done something far more difficult. She had carried life through impossible cold, birthed it in the shadow of death, and raised it strong enough to return to a world that had nearly claimed them all. She had been rescued once, pulled from snow and silence by human hands. But what she truly needed was not saving. It was a chance to do what she was born to do, to rescue her own.